This is tape 3, the 1995 construction series, shop series, World Series. Who knows what series it is? We don't have a World Series this year. STREGA. This is the model we're going to roughly emulate here. And one of the things I wanted to show, since on this tape we're going to be doing canopies, I'm going to look through my Reno, and of course this is Gentlemen, You Have Erased, the book. Some of the ideas we can get for a bubble canopy. We really would like to have a bubble canopy on this plane. And we will be trying to do, at least hopefully, do a detailed cockpit. That's the best way to put it. So let's look through this book and see if we can get some good ideas. And this is just one way of getting some inspiration and some ideas for your future project, no matter what plane you build, even if you're building an Obla. This is the home-built type of canopy, shoestring type, like Bill Simons used on his shoestring. Dago Red's canopy here. This is a real nice one. It's kind of like a bubble, really swept back. Again, we're just looking for ideas here. Yeah, look at his Dago Red canopy, another view of it. And that's pretty much what we're looking for. We want to have that kind of bubble canopy, very sleek, very low look. Another real low, real low. Kind of an unusual canopy on a circus plane, the home built. Now there's a real cool look. Look at the way that wing blends in and everything. Kind of, this is how you get ideas. The only way you get ideas is by looking through books, magazines, or if you have the imagination. Somewhere you have to get the seed for an idea for your new plane. And this is certainly, there's some I can see Midgley's mind melting down now, figuring out how he can put this on one of his dog planes. Anyway, ideas are always good to put in the bank, even if you don't use them. I'm not sure I like that one. It's kind of like a smoothie canopy. Look at the canopy here. This kind of looks like Ted's canopy. A little top piece, you know, kind of like a similar to Ted's canopy anyway. And I think, what do you call it? Walt Prade did one similar to this too. Anyway, more good ideas. And this is the only way you're going to get it. Since we're doing a fantasy airplane that really doesn't exist, we want to have as many ideas as possible, as many things we can incorporate all into the same plane. The Red Baron, that style canopy which we've done on our Red Baron, and similar to what we tried to paint onto Tsunami. This would be cool if you could figure out a way of just having this go just before appearance judging. Cool. This is one of the pictures of the Red Baron that actually inspired me to build it, with the big tall rudder and the number 5 on it and the props. But it's this kind of thing that you get ideas from, you get inspiration from. If you don't really love these models, if they're not all individual little, they're like people, really. They really are people. They each have a little personality and stuff. But this is one of the original pictures that I looked at. This is the beginning of the race, and this is Bob Hoover up here in the top peeling off out of the race when a gentleman, you have a race, they start the race. It's these kind of things that inspire you, they get you moving, they get you where you really want to build a certain model. And this year, we want to make some kind of a fantasy rendition of STREGA. Again, this is just ideas for the exhaust, the lettering, the gold leaf lettering, the canopy. Think of the things you can get, ideas you can get, different paint jobs, the Red Baron lettering. Another one of these real low canopy on Miss Candace. Good idea for a rudder treatment too. Now it just happens Reno air races are always an inspiration. This is Miss Foxy Lady in one of the early paint jobs. There's always ideas you can get somewhere. the books are important to have. A roto finish he has on those real experimental low slung canopies too. And you can even get ideas for your lettering, and oh, there's just no end to it. No end to it. And Darrell Greenemeyer in Conquest. Look at that low canopy. Just the top of his head is sticking out. Hey, Walt Russell. Good idea here. Walt Russell loves those Bearcats. Okay, I'm psyched. I don't know about you. I'm sure Adamusco's psyched, Midgley's psyched, we're all psyched. We belong in a psycho ward. Let's go build. I just want to spend a few minutes talking about different options we have when making a canopy. This, of course, is the Red Baron. Now, what a canopy really is, really, and this is a very important concept to understand, as a focal point. And what generally happens is you have this model, and of course it's the Plebinski special, and somebody goes to look at it, and the first thing they see, what's the first thing they see? They look at your new model, boom, 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 boom. Wow, look at that canopy, look at that pilot, look at that seat or stick or whatever it is. It's always important. It's a focal point. Now, if you understand it's a focal point, what that means is you want to put more than the average amount of time and energy and effort into making it look pretty. Sure, there's other things, but a canopy is a focal point. Now, in the old sweeper days, I'll just make this real rough. In the old sweeper days, one of the things that was always important, at least I always thought was important, that forward jet canopy. Boy, that forward jet canopy, boy, did that always get people looking and wondering how you did it and whatever. But what I always did was I carved off the top block, and of course I didn't have video back then, so I didn't document any of this. But I did mention it in the article I wrote in 1968. How I got, and this was the top block, how I got all that canopy detail in there. And to backstep, just let me backstep one more step here, because I had the top block and the rudder on it, and you've seen that already on this set of videos. And what I did is I made the whole canopy in a box. And then I took this little box and I had all the wheels and dials, and a seat was in there, and a stick, and a bird cage, and some naked women, and was all kinds of stuff. It was a little, if you looked at it from the top, it was a little box, just like a little matchbook box. And then what I did, I carefully cut this out, took that box, sunk that box right in, so now it was part of this, and then of course installed the clear plastic part of the canopy. Now that's just one way. Obviously there's other ways, but the way I think I'm going to choose to do this is carefully measure out for the box. If you make this box, you then somewhere down the road will have, and I just want to do this off camera so I can, some amount of instruments, and these are available from a million different sources, whatever the instruments of choice. Tatone makes them, several other companies. It's a good idea if you're not a real pilot, take a look at a real airplane and see just what a dashboard looks like. There's usually pedals in the bottom. There's usually a stick or a wheel. And this, a toothpick makes a nice stick or a wheel. The bottom of this, the floor, is always of a non-slip material. In our case, what I used to use, I've used in the Red Baron, is 80 grit red sandpaper for the floor. It's a maroon kind of sandpaper. And there's several other ideas here. You can use the sides, make light ply out of the sides, and put lightning holes in them. That always kind of looks realistic. A throttle quadrant. Throttle quadrant will usually look something like this. And you can make this out of a piece of 1/8 inch balsa. Have a pinhead sticking up with a throttle on it. And that usually would be on this side. Well, it really doesn't matter. Each airplane can be different where it has its instruments and stuff. But some of the different things, a little chair, you can make a little chair out of 64th plywood. And what I've done in the past is put balsa in the middle and just run lines up and down it so it looks like it's upholstered. And you can make a little seat belt out of a piece of shoelace, and then a little belt buckle out of a little piece of tin foil wrapped around a piece of cardboard. But you can even go so far as to make a harness. There's really a lot of little choices you have. Making all these little details outside the airplane in this little box is really a big help. It really makes it not that difficult to do. Now here's just some of the ways you can get yourself trapped. You want to measure the top. This is the top. Wherever, if this is a forward canopy or rear canopy, measure inside the fuse sides, and you want this box to be a little bit thinner. And you want to make sure, if it's a midsection, if it's going over the wing, and your horn is here saying here's the fuse side, just as an example of one of the things, you don't want to put the canopy down here and a horn after you put it in the body, the horn or the push rod or something bonks right into it. So a safe way of doing this, one of I call it a safe way, is I lay the top block right on the table so that nothing sticks below when it's laying on a table. And I'll measure side to side, top to bottom, and get a dimension that I want to make my little box in. And try to get that done ahead of time. So from the top view, it'll appear like this. And from the side view, it doesn't stick down into the airplane and either run into, and I've made things and then it ran into the wing. Oh, well, you can't cut the wing out, you can't cut the horn. The only one you're really safe on is if you do a sweeper kind of thing. The motor mounts are up here, and you can use the motor mounts as part of the canopy. The quadrants and stuff can be up here. But back here, you got to be aware that you could run into the wing, run into the push rod. And in this case, we want to figure this all out ahead of time. It makes it a lot easier if you do all this research ahead of time. Most common problem of people that make their first canopy, they make some kind of bubble canopy. They make the box either in the plane or off the plane. And boy, one of the biggest problems you can have in the whole world is this whole area can be sealed. Now the canopy is obviously a sealed unit. This joint along the fuse is sealed, and if you seal this whole thing and make it airtight, what's going to happen? On a cloudy day, it's going to get all moisture, and you've seen this. It looks like the inside of a beer bottle. It looks terrible. And as it condenses, it's going to look even worse. You put it out in the sun, it's going to condense and shrink and condense and shrink. What I always do, if you leave a hole in the bottom of the canopy, let's say you leave a hole here, well, you're going to have what Paul Walker had one year. All of the dust and chips from inside the plane are going to work their way up. The pilot's going to look like he's been choking on cocaine. Now what you really want to have, and this is a well thought out thing, is a hole somewhere. So this is not a sealed unit. Down inside the plane, a hole, but covered with a piece of coffee filter. Say from the bottom view, you have this, a hole and a penny-sized piece of coffee filter under the seat so that air can get in and air can get out. But it's filtered as it goes in and out. And you may not think that's important until all of a sudden you either have a cocaine dust bucket for a canopy, or you have what Gene Schaefer had one year, is the pilot, his head fell off It was really kind of silly. The pilot got loose in there, and you'd start the plane inverted and he'd go for a ride. So another thing too you want to keep in mind is everything you do inside, you're using such a little amount of material, that hardwood, plywood, and epoxy, glue, whatever, solid. You don't want to have Midgley's head come off halfway through a flying season. Now, just for your own information, you may or may not, you order these SIG canopies. They come all different sizes and heights. You get the one that you want, whatever. Now, what you may choose to do is tint them. You can make any color of tint. What you do is you go and get RIT dye. The ordinary dye comes in a box that we dye the hinges with and whatever. RIT dye, boil the water, let it cool off. Maybe for 15-20 minutes. It needs to be a little lower than boiling. If you boil it, this canopy is going to shrivel up like an old woman's pocketbook. What you want to have is a little lower than boiling. Dip it in. Now what you do is you have those scraps. You know, the canopy comes on a piece. Well, take a piece of this scrap, or buy 2 canopies, and you have this boiling water. It's a little lower than boiling. Submerge the whole canopy in there. Leave it in for about a minute. Take it out, it'll be a certain color, whatever color that is. Put it in for another minute, it'll get darker. Put it in for another minute, it'll get darker. Almost infinitely, it'll keep getting darker. The problem is, at some point in time, you can't see your canopy details. And it all disappears and you did everything for nothing. If in doubt, leave it a little lighter than you expect to use. If it's a little bit lighter, it'll always be better than if it's a little bit darker. Lighter is better. And when you take it out in the sun, don't forget you're going to be looking through one side of the canopy and out the other, so it'll automatically be darker than it is when you look through one side. And then you'll still be able to see your instruments. Dave Midgley has a lot of canopy molds. He has molds for Noblers and different planes that you can't buy the canopy from anymore. If you need a special canopy, give Dave a call. If not, one of the sources is SIG. And obviously one of the things I did, and this is just ideas you can use, is Byron. Byron Models makes these big giant scale things. Now what I did is I bought the big giant canopy that belongs on an F-16. This canopy was about, boy, I don't even remember. It was just half the size of the fuselage. And I cut it down so I only used this top part on my F-16. And then I went and put a lot of details in it. But that canopy was about a 32nd of an inch thick. It really was beautiful. It cut down real nice. But that's another source of canopies, or kits. Like a chipmunk kit, you can get that canopy that looks like a chipmunk. Whatever that, a Mustang. They have P-51 canopies if you're doing, you know, the Warbird kind of a Mustang. Bearcats. They have a Bearcat canopy that's kind of cool. So if you're going to put all this time and energy into a canopy, you want to research out all these possibilities. So you come up with something that you're really going to impress your friends and neighbors with. Now, if you watched last year's tsunami videos, you know I went crazy looking at this canopy till the cows came home. I always keep pictures around for inspiration, for ideas. And this is one of the canopies. Somewhere in my life, I'm going to make one of these canopies that opens up for appearance judging. Blow everybody's mind, and then right after the gnats, seal it shut with silicone. Anyway, just ideas. Ideas are always important. Now the old MiG, you can see here in the picture, he had a pretty exotic canopy. In fact, tell you the truth, I just thought of something. I still have the MiG. What's left of them, I could cut that canopy right out and put it in another plane. Nice that canopy was, right up forward. I used the motor mounts as part of the canopy. Pretty nice, but again, good ideas. These are ideas you get ideas you can use. Look at the canopy on this. This is the old F-16 from '84. Macaluso, eat your heart out. All of the details, all of that stuff. Oh my God, scoops, fillets, rescue things. A lot of work. Another one of my favorite canopy jobs. Look at the eyes on this pilot. This is the guy in a Sidewinder. Look at the eyes. I love this pilot. If you've ever watched those Sidewinder videos, you know I really went nuts playing with this canopy. This is a picture of the execution of this This plane had a canopy you could kill for. Now I want to tell you a funny story, and this is a true story. When I was spraying the clear on this plane, I put a little bit too much thinner in the paint, and I melted this canopy. It got a wrinkle in it. I had to redo the whole damn canopy. This was tinted red. Can't even get it on the macro lens, but believe me, this was a lot of work making this canopy. Now, if you want to go back to 1966, check this canopy out. Check the details. Check that paint job. Look at that face. Ooh. Anyway, a lot of information here, a lot of good ideas. Look at this, world's first Super Tiger 60 powered plane. Check it out, man. Ahead of your time. Okay, ego trips over. Just some ideas. And of course, the Red Baron. Who could forget the Red Baron? Just another picture of the F-16 canopy here. Macaluso, eat your heart out. Eat your heart out. Yum, 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 yum. F-16, 1984. Now, with all that in mind, I'm sure you're just dying. You're absolutely dying to go build a canopy. So, let's go build one. A beautiful painting George Venturini made me. George, you're okay. I don't care what Midgley says about you. Now, before we actually start this cockpit today, one of the things I like to do, and this is a good way to do any part of the modeling project, I like to get all my materials together that I'm going to need. One of the things, obviously, I'm going to need, I bought 3 of these canopies. One's a little bigger than the next. And when I go to plot out exactly where I want the canopy, now this is a critical thing, especially if you use a bubble canopy or you're trying to create a look. Moving the canopy either further forward will make it look more like a jet. In the middle, it'll look more like a chipmunk, and further back, it'll look more like a Reno Air Racer. So I have 3 of these canopies that I can experiment with, cut down, narrow, whatever. And I will show exactly at least how I want to do this based on... Now what I'm trying to create here is the look of a Reno Air Racer. Reno Air Racers generally have a mid to back canopy that's quite a bit lower than a stock P-51 and quite a bit thinner in this dimension. It kind of sits way low where only the pilot's top of his head and eyes stick out. It's not like a fighter canopy where it's way up in the air. So that's one thing. I have 3 of these canopies. I have a 9, an 8, and a 7, and I can go back and forth, cut them all up, practice with them, whatever. Another good thing, since these canopies only cost $1 or $2 a piece, if you're going to do a canopy and you decide that this is the shape you want, maybe what a good idea would be is order 5 of them and dye one blue, dye one green, leave one clear. So in the final, when you go to put this on the ship, you'll have 5 or 6 choices of, ooh, I like that, I like that. This plane will be red, basically a red plane, so maybe I'll want the canopy a contrasting color like blue. But most of the time when I try for a semi-scale plane like the Red Baron, I like to keep the canopy clear. Now these are just some ideas for you before you actually start anything. You can buy these instruments, and you get these from SIG. These are all the little instruments. I'll show these up close later. Now, what Jeff Stiefel did for me is he went to work and he took a photocopier and shrunk them down. Then he took the shrunken ones and reproduced them in 2 different sizes. Then he took and just made me copy after copy after copy. I bet you I have 15 sheets here. So I could go in the instrument business. Now, if you're really going to do a canopy, well, you're going to buy these, and I think these are $3 or $4 for a sheet. Well, one of the good ideas you can do is you can photo enlarge them a little bit bigger, photo enlarge them down, and you'll have many choices then about making your little dashboard. When you finally do get the shape and size you want, you can decide, gee, I want bigger instruments, smaller, larger, whatever. Now, the other thing too is you don't have to spend $4. You can usually Xerox copy even in a hardware store for 15 cents a copy. So if you're going to make copies, run over to a Staples kind of store or whatever and make up a bunch of instruments. That would be step 2. And I do have a bunch of them here. Now, step 3, unfortunately, I can't show on video because we have a friend, and I will not mention any names. He borrowed, I have a little box, it's like a shoe box, and every time I come across something I think would look good in a canopy, I put it in that box. So all during the year, and it's been 3 or 4 years since I did a real canopy, I have a nice box. Geez, it's got all kind of little pilot helmets and things from HO trains and macaroni ends. Actually, some of the things that make good parts for a canopy, Jim Damarel, if you look back on the videos, if you go to where they sell car parts, you'll see all different kind of pilots and drivers and steering wheels and things that belong in a car but really do look good in a model plane. Tom Niebuhr has a nice idea. One of the nice ideas I've seen him do, he cuts out the canopy shape and he takes velvet and glues velvet right to the outside, so when you look into the canopy you see a nice velvet look. Ted Fancher had a great idea. He had this big sleek looking canopy years ago, maybe he still has it. And he took this reflective stuff that changes color in the sun and ran a big piece in there. I thought that was cool as hell. The metal flake looks good in a canopy. Typically canopies are an anti-glare black, the front part, because a pilot doesn't want to see the sun reflecting off aluminum or shiny Imron paint or whatever. So maybe having said all this and knowing all this, we can make up a kind of a realistic, nice canopy. And I'm going to do this on the tape, and I'm going to try to do it step by step so that somebody, and obviously maybe somebody will be interested in this tape not only as a part of building Strega, but just to see they want to put a canopy in an SV11 or in a ballerina or whatever. Some of the cute little ways of doing this. I documented this on the Nobler video, and I remember Bill Rich calling me up and saying, man, every plane I have from now on will have a cool canopy. One of the other things you'll need, I don't have it up on the table right now, is some aluminum tubing and some brass tubing. Making rivet heads. Some little tiny paint brushes. What I like to use, I have all this different colored paper to make, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, because as you start a canopy, you go to an art supply store and get a bunch of paper. I also like to use sandpaper when you want to show the texture in a real cockpit, the rug, or you want to simulate a rug, or you want to simulate what would be a non-slip surface. Sandpaper works great. The stick you can usually make, if you're going to make a stick instead of a wheel, you can make it out of a toothpick. And we'll try to show it. The Red Baron was like that. Some of the cockpits I've seen, detail in cockpits, is just unbelievable. The criteria here, I don't want any loose parts that halfway through the season are going to come flying out or be upside down or whatever. And I will not have a pilot. I have looked around for pilots for the last 6 months and have not found one that I think fits the shape and the size that I like. The problem here with a real pilot is, if you make a pilot the scale size, his feet would be, you know, where the motor is. It just doesn't look right. And he has a head like an egg. I don't like that look either. It looks like Humpty Dumpty in the cockpit. So sometimes if you can't simulate it the way you really think it'll look good, the best thing to do is do what I'm doing and just make a cockpit. Now without a pilot, you get to see more of the detail. So we're going to be carving up a chair, a seat belt, a lot of rivet heads, a lot of little simulated lightning holes everywhere, and we'll just do this as we get into it. We'll do it. Also, one of the tricks you might want to have handy is if you go down to a store that sells these plastic models, they make a set of all different olive drab color paints with a darker, lighter, green, brown, for military camouflage. Now that's the perfect thing to simulate aluminum oxide in a canopy. Those paints, when you mix them with talcum powder, because they're flat, they tend to really simulate what a real canopy would look like. And of course I've used, Sidewinder has that, by the way. If you go back to the Sidewinder videos and see all the work I did on a canopy, wow, cool as hell. I thought that canopy was just super. So anyway, rather than spend a lot more time on this, step one of this whole deal is, and I'll show this, this is why I brought all the fuselage parts out. I want to tape the fuselage together. This is why you want to have the rudder done first. I want to kind of tape the whole fuselage together with masking tape. One of the mistakes you can make when you do this is if you do this in midair and you put the box in, it spreads the block. Then you go to put the block back on and you can't get it to sit just right. So if you do all your engineering with the block taped in place, and I know this is starting to sound like a long dissertation, but I think the information you can use, what I'm really hoping is somebody can watch this video and on their first or second or even, you know, whatever, they can come up with a really nice, really efficient, effective looking canopy. Now what this does, I want to tape this on first of all. I want to tape all the blocks on. I get to see the look that I'm looking for. And what I'm looking for is that Reno Air Racer look. And of course I have all the Reno books here, the STREGA books and everything. But if you put everything together, it'll give you a much better, I think anyway, a much better chance of achieving the look that you think you want. And I just tape this together on a temporary basis just to hold it in place. This is why I like, one of the reasons I like to have the rudder all in position, everything ready to go, because then I can sit on a side view, I can take it outside. One of the things I try to do, and it's raining today, I won't get to do it today, but we'll be doing it before the week's over. I take it, march off 70 feet, lay it on a lawn chair or whatever, and from 70 feet away, take a look at that side view. Do you like that side view? Does it look chunky? Does it look fat? Does it look skinny? Does it look like your wife in a nude? Whatever. You don't want to have something that you're going to live with that side view for 2,500 flights or 3,000 flights. You sure don't want to have something that, you know, that looks like Willie the Whale or Muffy the Muppet or something. Anyway, I'll finish assembling this all off video. I'm going to put the rudder on, the cowling, tape everything up, and then step one will be to locate the canopy. Make a decision on where the canopy is going to be. Now from this, you see I have the fuselage all taped together here. And this is one of the most critical things. I'm doing this on the shop floor. I've propped it up with a Taffender tank here because I want to get that side view look. And I want to decide exactly where that canopy, if it's too far back, is going to look kind of hokey. If it's too far forward, it's going to look like a saber jet, you know, or it's going to look like something, a pumpkin or something I don't like. So I'm going to spend about the next 15 or 20 minutes. I'll cut out the canopy and try to position it so that I'm happy with where it is on the fuselage. And that is a super critical thing. Even being off by 1/4 of an inch, it's not going to look attractive. I just wanted to show the instruments up close here. These are the ones Jeff Stiefel made for me. These are Xerox copies and they're perfectly okay. Now here's the other thing. I picked up 5 SIG canopies for under $10 here. And this way I'll have one to test, one to check the dye on and see if, who knows, if I'm going to dye it. A nice little one if I want to make a real, and you never know this until you go and do all this. One that looks like a chipmunk or a Mustang or whatever. But each one of these will make a different look. The canopy, because it's a focal point on a plane, can be make a tremendous difference in the way a plane looks just for $1.50's worth of canopy. So anyway, I'm going to start by cutting the first one down and try to get it in a position that I'm hopefully going to like. Now step one is you have to cut the ridge off. I try to cut it off even with the bottom, and then it's going to have to come tapering up in the front and tapering up in the back, much like installing a piece of sheetrock. And you got to keep picking away at the hard spots. A brand new pair of scissors seems to be the way to go here. Now that I've said that, they'll probably split the canopy. It's a little easier to do it with scissors than it is with a razor blade. But you know, a canopy really does, if you're willing to pay the weight and the labor penalty, it really does add a little dimension to a plane that, unless you're going to go fly in Lubbock, Texas or something where it's 1,000 degrees, really is a nice touch to have on a plane. Now after I get this trimmed off, the final trim in here I'll try to do on camera, because that is really one of the pain in the necks of model aviation. Now if you lay this up here, you notice it only hits in the front and back. And now I have to start creating that lip in the front till this starts to sit down into the shape that I want it to be. Now a good way to get a rough estimate on this is I just put a piece of 1/8 inch tape on the canopy and I'm looking at it to see if I've copied that curve pretty well. With the tape on, of course you can move it, and you're probably not going to get this right on the first shot anyway. So with that tape on there, now you can cut and start nipping away at it. It's probably going to take 6-7 times before you get that curve just right. At the same time, you can be thinking, hey, now I have to make a commitment. Where is this canopy going to be? You know, you either have to turn this into a Mustang or whatever right now. Now see how nice that fits on there now? All right, we've got it, well, close anyway. Real close. We could pull the tape off. Now the other question is, how much of the canopy do you want to stick up? We could take and put 1/4 inch tape around this whole thing and let it all sit down just a little bit more. I want to take just a little bit more off. So again, what I'll do is I'll take the 1/8 inch tape, strip off a piece. I know I have the angle pretty much now the way I want it. Now I can just, by using the tape. Now the reason it's important to get this right, because we're going to bury this canopy. We're going to dig a little ditch into the top block, and this top block is only maybe 3/32 of an inch thick. It's really thin right now, and we want to get it right so it sticks down into the top block by you know, 1/16 of an inch or so. We want to get some epoxy right in there. Epoxy this right in. Now see, by doing this, I'm going to actually lower the canopy 1/8 of an inch. I'll cut this off camera. This will take 5 minutes to cut, but having this tape on here allows you to get a feel for just exactly where this is going to go. Alright, we just try to figure out the position we want to have the canopy on, get all the looks, settle on a position, and we're going to start making a permanent mark here for where we want to set this canopy into the top block. Now this is one of the things, having that Jeff Stifle invention here to hold the body is handy right now. By the way, I wasted the whole afternoon yesterday carving a pumpkin. Somewhere in this video I'll show that pumpkin. But tonight I'm having the guys over the house for the class, for the get-together, pizza party, or whatever you want to call it. What I'm going to do, out behind the house, it's all dark, I'm going to put it right out there with a candle on it. Anyway, back to airplanes. I want to get the final mark on where this canopy is going to be, and I'll make that decision just by, you saw yesterday I went back and forth with this. I want to get a final set on where the canopy is and then trace out the outline so I know exactly where that canopy is going to be. Now I'm just taking this tape on and off. I want to get a little bit more taken off the front of the canopy. And before you go and cut it, it's easier to do it with tape. I know I need to have, when I drop this down, I don't want it under stress that I'm squeezing it. I want to just drop it down and it just sits on there and touches all around. Just like a piece of sheetrock. When you put sheetrock up, you want it to touch all around, not hit on any hard spots before we actually put it down. So I'm going to, you can see I'm just going to remove this little in the front. Now you can see, even though I have it hard up here, now watch back here, the back is off just a little bit. And I don't want to squeeze this down, so you can see the hard spot in here. I'm just going to do the same thing with the tape. Trim away that hard spot or even sand it away. The idea being, you want to take the canopy and you want it to drop on and it touches completely. If you have to squeeze it or smash it down or mash it or whatever, what happens is you build some stress into the canopy. Then you hit it with thinner or whatever later on, and the thing will give you funny shapes or whatever. It's hard enough to get a canopy real nice without having all that extra aggravation. Now, after looking at this for quite a while, what I want to do is just take about, and I've got the 1/8 inch tape set, I have it equal on all spots. I want to lower the whole canopy down onto the plane to give it a lower look. I want to take about another 1/8 inch off, but the easiest way to do that is outline it with tape. Because you have this, in other words, you have this shape right now. You just want to lower the whole canopy down. That's a great way to do it. And each time you do it, you kind of change the sweep of the canopy. It's getting lower and lower and nastier looking and everything, and the guy's head is getting squashed and the pumpkin's getting squashed. So if you go too far, that's why we buy extra canopies. Okay, with that, that's about as low as we want to get it. With that in mind, we're going to lay out exactly, now we're going to make the commitment where we want to have this as far as being on the top block goes. This is our last chance to change. Now what I'm doing, I'm moving it down on the floor. Put a little piece of tape holding the canopy in the position I think will be the final position here. I want it just enough back that it looks like a racer, but I don't want it looking like Tsunami there, because that's not how the real Strega really looked. And this is enough non-semi scale to begin with. But right about there looks about right as far as I can tell. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to bother doing this on camera because it's a crappy day out there. I'm going to take this outside and do the 70-foot test, lay it up on a lawn chair, stand 70 feet away, and see how I like it. Alright, real happy with that. Okay, now, one of the things I want to sight right down the center of the fuselage, and I want to mark where I think the center is. I don't want to have the canopy cocked to one side or the other. I hopefully want to get it as close to the middle as I can. Make sure the block is where it's going to be in the final position. Take a thin ballpoint pen and just get a rough outline of where this canopy should be. And this will be our reference point for laying out all the canopy details. There's a lot more to it than just gluing on a canopy, that's for sure. At least I think so. You can dramatically change the whole look of the airplane just by changing the canopy. Or just by dyeing it or painting it or whatever. And if you need custom-made canopies, give Dave Midgley a call. He's got the molds to the Nobler and the who knows what. Molds to Marilyn Monroe's buttocks. Okay. Now while we were off camera, what I did, I went and made up a spare canopy. Just in case I'm in the middle of a Sunday afternoon and I go to glue this on and something doesn't look right, I pull it off, or I may dye one and see if I like one blue or red or green or clear. I'm pretty sure I'd want it clear though on a scale plane. Anyway, having a spare canopy will be a big help somewhere down the road. Now before I take the tape off, I want to dress this edge off, because the first thing I'm going to do is cut the ditch in the top block, and I want this to be a nice smooth fit. I want a good fit. I don't want this where epoxy or whatever is going to leak into the canopy or leak out. We'll put the coffee filter inside the canopy. So the outside you can dress off all the edges once you get the final shape. Try not to scratch it. And we're done with the tape. Clean all the dust off. Okay, we have the line on the fuselage. And the canopy's sitting right there, and that's about as close a fit as even Stan Powell would be proud of that. See, that purple line is the outline of where this canopy is going to sit, right on the top block. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to trace in here maybe a 1/64 of an inch and put an inner line around. I'll do that freehand, and then I'm going to get an X-Acto knife and just chisel out a little ditch in there. Just make a little ditch that that canopy can drop right into. And here's one of those priceless tricks you always get from Pro Stunt products, whether you need it or not. To trace that line on there by hand is really tough, but what you can do is just take the canopy and slide it back just a little bit. We're looking for about a 1/64 of an inch, and use the canopy itself to put the line on. And that gives you the inner edge. Boy, aren't these tricks worth $1 million bucks? But I bet you Jimmy Borelli's just drooling. He was saying, I'll blow that Ertnowski into the weeds next year. And he probably will. Okay, same thing on this side. Just pull the canopy back. This gives you a perfect template, because obviously you're using the canopy itself. Slide it back. Give yourself 1/64 of an inch. And then the front, just slide it back, using the canopy for a little pattern. Tell me that's not a neat idea. Okay, now in the back, you're going to need, because of the way the curvature is, you're going to need to take out a little more than you thought you would. Always the back always goes in just a little bit more. That's par for the course. This is the most important part, is notch this back in, because the back, if you start chiseling the back, you're going to have a big gap there to fill. The back always will come up a little faster than you think it will on a bubble canopy. Okay, next thing is get brand new number 11 X-Actos and carve a little ditch. Okay, now what I'll do is just put a real slow slice in. Go around the inside first. A nice easy touch. I don't want to cut the whole piece out. I just want to make a little notch like a ditch. You can do half and then turn it around. Now remember, the canopy's going in on this angle, so you don't want to cut from this side, you want to cut from this angle. Just watch the angle of the knife. This will save you a lot of work. Save you a lot of epoxylite and a lot of weight too. One of the things, we don't want to have a 6-ounce canopy on here. So that epoxylite, you know, the more epoxylite you put around a canopy, more chances the fillet's going to bubble up and all kind of nasty things are going to happen. The thinner you can keep that fillet around a canopy, the better. Okay, now the trick is turn it around. Do the same thing this way. The angle of the knife is very important. You want to have the angle of the knife be almost the same as the canopy. And we sure don't want to go through either. We want to go as close as possible. Okay. And boy, over the years I have seen some really nice canopies. Just trying to remember how many nice ones I've seen. Boy, they're just unbelievable. I remember the canopy the late George Gatiss had in his P-38. It was unbelievable. Every instrument had a light behind it too. You could shut the lights out in the room and turn the instrument lights on. Oh man, awesome. A real modeler. Okay, now with that cut, the next trick is I'm just going to cut little notches here and just pick out one piece at a time. Cut myself a notch, pick a little piece out. Let me show this on the macro lens. See, if you just cut a little notch, maybe a 1/4 of an inch, and pick that piece out. Cut a 1/4, pick it out, pick it out, pick it out, and just go right down. A 1/4 inch piece out at a time is just about right, and you'll have a nice ditch when you're finished. Now with that channel carved, take a piece of 220, just fold it up And be real careful you don't go through. What I'm going to do, as soon as I finish carving this, I'm going to take the top block off and go underneath this and harden up all the wood around this ditch with CA so that that canopy is sitting in nice hardwood. You wouldn't want to do that before you carve. Make sure you have a nice tight fit on the canopy. And you see, I can see a couple of pinhole spots where I've gone through, but won't be a problem. That's what the captain of the Titanic said, don't worry. Anyway, we will get that nice ditch carved in there. And a couple of swipes. Now you want to make it big enough because we're going to try to attach this with epoxy. I don't like CA, it leaves like a cloudy film on the inside of the canopy. Epoxy doesn't. When it comes time to attach it, and that'll be far down the road. Now I also had to pay strict attention. My control horn, I will not be able to go any lower than the floor of this top block because the control horn's going to rub on it. In this throw. So imagine if you made a big box here and you put your cockpit in there and everything, and then, you know, Bubby the pilot, you know, that thing would be giving him a little irritation as it went by. Anyway, things you have to think about. It's just a little more complicated than it first looks. When you see somebody with a real nice canopy, you know, a little bit of thought went into it. Now you get an idea what that ditch looks like there. And you can see a little spot here I went through. And back here you need to make this radius bigger than you think you do. Okay, now it'd be a good idea just to do a little test fit with the old canopy here. See if it drops into that notch. It should stay on there by itself. Okay, now I'm going to pull this top block off, and underneath here hit it with thin CA to harden up that wood so that my canopy is sitting right in something nice and solid, like a little foundation on a house. Now an easy way to do this is take the top block, hold it up to the light, and trace out the area where the canopy actually sits. Go past it maybe 1/4 of an inch or so. And you can see what we have on there. We have the channel where that actually sits. And of course now the trick is no trick at all. Get some thin CA. What I've seen happen many times is you get a canopy installed and it's so flimsy because it's sitting in this paper thin top block. What happens is, you know, you wipe the plane off a few times and all of a sudden you've got a mess instead of a canopy. A little thin CA in there, and of course the always mandatory Q-tip, spread it around. As soon as you feel it going off, you'll have enough. As soon as your eyes water, you'll know you've had enough here. Listen, Borelli, I want to see a cockpit on that plane this year. I know Borelli's building a secret weapon out there. I want to see cockpits. Have a cockpit contest. And there's a little thin spot right here where the canopy is I want to touch up too. Yeah, just wait for that to kick off. Now I'm just double checking. I had to take a little more material out of the back, as you always do. Make sure now it's off the top block. Now if you find, like I do, that you're missing a little spot here, you can sand the canopy, or you can just run the knife right along the edge of the canopy and take out some sandpaper, fold up some 220 or whatever. Now that that's hardened underneath, you can really get a nice, you know, you're working on some solid material here instead of working on a marshmallow. I'm just going to mention this trick that Ski Dombrowski told me about on his plane, and he has, oh boy, does he have a canopy. What he did is when he put this canopy on, and when he did the epoxylite, he put some black epoxy paint, or I think ink, I don't remember what he said, but it was black something, in with the epoxylite, so that any epoxylite that showed inside the canopy would already be black. It would look like it belonged there. There's nothing worse and I've tried this myself. I've tried to attach a canopy with CA, and you look inside and you can see all those little white bubbles of the CA, and then now it's attached. Now what do you do? Anyway, the black is a good idea. Maybe we'll try to put a little black, I don't know, epoxy paint or something in with the epoxy, so that if we do see it, it'll look black, it'll kind of disappear. Now pretty much for the rest of working with this top block, we want to work off a nice flat table. I don't want to build a bow into it or anything, so needless to say, let's scrape off all the trash from the last time we worked off the glass. Always clean the glass with an ice scraper. We want to lay out. Let's see how this looks. We want to keep the block nice and flat while we're working on it. Because it's terrible if you start working on this and you build a banana out of it, or a birch bark canoe or something. Right about here, this looks like we've got a pretty good fit now all around on that canopy. Now the first thing I want to do with the block upside down, where I have all this CA in here, I want to build a floor underneath here, even with the bottom of the block. Then I want to take the block and bring it over to the fuselage and make sure I haven't done this. I haven't spread it, or I haven't got it too thin in one dimension. I want to have a nice, and I'll use 16th balsa, lay a piece of 16th balsa, grain going side to side. And that'll give me the limit where the push rod and the horns are not going to run in and and tickle the pilot while he's flying. All right, with the grain going side to side, laying out a piece of 16th inch wood. And I want to make sure I'm not spreading the block or pinching it. Just a question now of hopefully connecting the dots and get a nice clean cut. And we want this to be flush. I don't want to have this sticking down below that top block. Now I just did a little test fit in here. What I did, showed us on camera, I took this, put it up over the fuselage, and it was spread out about a 16th too much. So what I'm going to do, and of course what I want to do, I want to come at least even with the front of the canopy. So maybe I'll just take and sand off just a little bit of this. It looks like it's hard in the front only. Just sand off the front a little bit. I want to just make sure I have that smooth fit, that I'm not sticking out or that I'm notched in. Once I have that, then I can mark on here, this is important, and I want the front of this to be right near the front of the canopy outlet. Mark where that should be. Now what I'm going to do is put a little arrow on here. The reason for putting the arrow on is I have exactly the place I want. I don't want to put this in upside down. I don't want to put it in sideways. What I want to do now is I want to give this a very slight chamfer. This has a curve coming in. I want to put a very slight chamfer in this wood. Very slight. So it'll be a little better joint. This again is going to actually become a fuse former, so it will add some strength. And I don't want to stick down below there at all. Okay. I took out this old sanding belt that I had. I was sanding floors in a house with this thing. Nice heavy dark color sandpaper. I use this for a pattern, and I'm going to epoxy this right into place. Remember, I have the little arrow, so I want to go on the other side. I'm going to epoxy that right in place now. And that'll then become the floor, the canopy floor. And just keep the arrow on the other side. We'll center this, even though there's probably going to be, half of this will be covered up. This gives a nice realistic textured look to the floor. And of course sandpaper comes in all different colors if you really wanted to. You could get red sandpaper, green sandpaper, or whatever. Alright, I want to attach this with epoxy. This is kind of stiff sandpaper. I really do want to get a good bond on this. I don't want to have it come flying off halfway through the season. Okay, there's our floor. Just let that epoxy dry for 10-15 minutes. We're ready to go on to the next step. The next step is I just want to tack this ever so gently in the corners. And then double, triple check that I'm not putting a spread in it. Believe me, the first time you do one of these and you go to put the block on and it spreads open, you learn a very valuable lesson. Where's that fuselage now? Check that we still have that contour that we want. Okay. Now you also want to check every step of the way that you're not making a banana out of the block. So lay it down on the table flat. See that you have a decent, decent chance of getting it nice and flat, and that you haven't spread that open or concaved it in. Not only do you want a permanent joint here, but I really want to have a radius of thick CA here too. I really don't want this getting loosened up, boy. I mean, Gene Schaefer had a pilot that the head came off halfway through a season. Some other embarrassing things can happen. Enough embarrassing things happen in this hobby, you don't have to add any to them. So I'll put a nice bead of thick CA, then we're going to flip this over and plot out where the actual hole, or whatever you want to call it, the cavity for the canopy will be. Remember, every step of the way here we want to seal this too. We not only want to have it strong, I don't want to have little holes where dust can get through and all that other nonsense. And what I want to do, I want to look at the bottom and I want to kind of roll it over and plot where that floor starts and ends. And I can just put some light marks here. Cut the hole a little bit on the small side and then work it up to the big side. I know I have the floor from there to there, so I'll kind of cut this on the small side. Leave a little bit of extra room around the edge. And then pretty much just connect the dots here. And I'll be ready to start building my box. Now when I cut this out, obviously a brand new blade, but I want to cut so that all the cuts are 90 degrees. I don't want to have these things go off on angles because I'm going to want to put the sides, the internal sides, and this is like building a dollhouse. The sides I want to have come right up completely parallel here, and of course the back of the chair fit right inside the canopy nice. Just a little macro lens here to give you an idea what we have so far. Hope you can follow this all step for step. I'm trying to do this really as many, get every step and get every one of them on video, so there's no secret here, and you can have one of those front row canopies too. And try to hold that knife at a 90-degree angle so we get a nice tight fit on our sides here. And of course some of the wood has been hardened up by the CA, which is good. Because what we're really doing here is making a very delicate thing. Now save this little piece that came out. You may want to use this at some future time. It looks like a real textured floor like you would find. Well, anyway, this is the way it was in that airplane that I owned, that air coupe. I think it had a sandpaper floor and catwalks and stuff. Anyway, just to give you an idea. Okay, the next thing, we're going to plot our sides. I want to create 2 sides, 1 on each side. Get them glued in, and that'll stabilize everything so this won't be flimsy. And then we can work on the chair and the dashboard. I just want to take a piece of 16th balsa and just get the length right here. I'll trace this out, and then I'll have a piece in fact, I'll make this oversized, and I can probably cut 2 pieces at once here. And we can just let the pieces stick up out of the fuse side as far as we want. It won't be a problem. Just leave them a little oversized for now. Now, next step, we'll just trim some of this off so we get down to where we have a human size here. We want to actually going to use this for a pattern. So I want to leave this sticking up just a little bit. It'll create a little bit of a 3-dimensional look in there. Now I'll just trace it over and make a duplicate pattern. Use one to make the other pattern. Now that I have both pieces there, I'm going to take these out and put a lining on them, laminate them to 64th plywood so that I won't see any wood grain in the final fit here. Now I got the balsa with the grain going straight up and down. I'm trying to make some real integrity in this box so we don't get anything funny happening. And of course the grain in the 64th plywood running the same way. Now I'll just let that CA dry on there and then cut them out and sand all the edges nice and clean. Now I just want to get the edges real nice. Take a sanding block, nice smooth edges, because we want to have a sealed surface here. Actually, I'm going to sand both sides of this and leave the dust on. The dust will help kick this off when we put it in position, in the final position. Now I have these edges all nice. These are ready to put in, but I want to do my detailing now on the side. I'll do one side at a time. Now the first detail I want to make is a throttle quadrant. And this is what a real throttle quadrant looks like. I'm making it out of 1/8" plywood for a reason. Is there's going to be a pin going in here, and I want the pin to really anchor into something solid. I don't want it, again, I don't want it jumping out 7, 8, 10 years from now when I'm right in the middle of winning the Nats, have the thing fall apart. Now I use the first one to trace out the second one, and then we're going to sandwich these between a piece of 64th plywood with 32nd so that there'll be a groove right in the middle, just like a real throttle quadrant. Now this is a spot where dollhouse building skills come in. Just ask Joe Adamusco, he'll tell you. Anyway, you got to enjoy. This is going to be a day or two, maybe even 3 days of just, well, making detailed little parts. You're not going to finish this in one day unless you really do a sloppy job. And I really want this to be, on this plane anyway, no matter what the outcome, no matter how well it flies, I want this to be, you know, the focal point of the plane. So little things like the throttle quadrant, it's going to take time. And just relax and enjoy it. That's all you can do here. Get them sanded down nice. Plywood makes a really nice throttle quadrant. If you do make this out of balsa, just beware. The problem is, or can be, you run into that old bugaboo that years later. And remember, I try to build everything as if it was going to last a lifetime, even though my body probably won't last a lifetime or whatever. Anyway, radius all the edges. Now we want to join these two little guys together with just enough space in between them that it looks like a throttle quadrant. Now if you need even any more ideas than this, not that I'm the scale expert, Find somebody in your group or your friend that's a scale modeler. He probably knows all these tricks, if not more. Magazines, those Air Classics are good. They always show dashboards. You can see what some of these planes really look like. Okay, that's one. Now the trick, I want to get this pulled apart and get the other one on the other side exactly the same. And there's really no end to the amount of detail you can do on this. Frank McMillan, I'm sure, is one of the people that had extensive Al Rabe. Remember Bob Whiteley had some nice canopies. Just to name it. Ted Fancher, some great ones. Nice little touch, and it really, really is a good way for you to show off your modeling skills. Okay. Yeah, there's our finished little throttle quadrant. And when that has the little pin sticking up, and we'll put some little graduations on that. Now, this is an important thing here while you're doing this kind of stuff, is to look around. You know, every time I look at a magazine, I try to get some ideas of cockpit details, just things that'll give me ideas. Ideas are worth their weight in gold. Some nice pictures of Al Rabe's Mustang. Talk about nice canopies. And I mean, just look at what a focal point this is. Beautifully detailed, beautiful. And believe me, I always save the magazines that have good canopy shots in them. Just a good source. I just took my lunch break sitting around here eating an apple and looking at an old magazine trying to get some ideas for my canopies. Alright, I glued that. That's detail 1 for this side. That'll be the throttle quadrant. Now I want to turn this into, I want to get some material with some lightning holes in here. Just simulated lightning holes. Okay, next step, I'm just going to take a piece of balsa wood, laminate this up as if it was a reinforcing piece. Oop, just broke it. Thank God for CA. And what I've done, I've traced it on the back. I'm going to go cut some lightning holes in it. Okay, I got to retrace that piece. Now, a little grindstone with a point on it is a good way to make up lightning holes. Hey, nice sidewinder canopy there. Nice view of that canopy. I don't know what tape this is. Nice canopy. Nice pilot there. Look at that pilot. Check him out. Midgley, eat your heart out. Here he is in living green, thanks to Mike Costello. Alright, anyway, reality time. This is what we've been using to carve this, in case I didn't show this up on just a grindstone with a point. I laminated this to a piece of 64th plywood. Now, of course, I'll just cut it out, sand one side, and attach it there, and I'll have one fuse side at least semi-complete anyway. Notice I'm working on a piece of black craft paper, art paper, or whatever you want to call it, because I can see the details better, thanks to my great eyesight. When I work on a light surface, I can't really see all the little errors in what I'm doing. Just points up the errors much like the silver paint. Now I want to get in there and clean these out. Just get all the edges nice and straight. And we're ready to attach them. And finish this little side up. Square all the edges off. It is one side actually pretty well detailed out and finished and ready to install. And what I'll do now is make the opposite side. The other side won't be exactly the same. It'll have little differences. Plane is not a symmetrical mirror image, but we will try to include some realistic looking things. I don't know what we're going to do yet. Time for some more ideas. Just get a little look here to see if this is going to look decent, or fit decent, or whatever. Just trying to get a little look here. Good. Now making up the other side here, just pretty much, I don't want to make mirror images. I want them to be similar but not exactly alike. I'll make up the same piece. I won't go over this over and over again. Another piece of 16th balsa, 64th plywood, and put the holes in it with the grindstone. Well, that's about all we're going to have time for today. Got our class starting on Monday night, building class, and we're expecting some people over tonight. If you happen to be around the area, you come over too. Alright, as I said before, my Monday night building class is going to be here real soon, so we're going to put this away. And we have a couple of days of masonry work to do, and then we'll be back making up the seat, making up the dashboard, whatever. In the meantime, think about getting ideas. Ideas, 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 ideas. That's the way to go. Look at magazines. Get every idea you can that you possibly can put into this cockpit. Monday night, and James is putting in some air vents here. Well, we'll get-togethers on Monday night, pizza get-togethers.
I'm only here for the pizza.
Yeah,
I can
we
sit
know.
home and do this.
Ron's putting some center line.
That's not a good center line.
These are the parts. Well, you can do it over. Just sand the old one off if it's
Maybe
crooked.
the line is good.
Okay.
Maybe the line.
You want to reference it off the side most of all.
I'm referenced off the ends.
If the line is good but the ruler's crooked, is that what you said?
The world has a curve in it, I think.
The line is straight. I gotta let Wendy look.
Where's sand? All right, let me take a look at that. Where's the sanding slave? Is he out there? Keep sanding! Keep sanding. This is Brian the sanding slave. Keep sanding, boy. I'll let you know when to stop.
Wow, they don't have to show that. Good, you're doing a good job.
Blow the dust away, that's it, and stay on that one side. Trying to work up some foam components with Brian and his father here.
Great.
All right, now do the same thing on the other side.
Just go easy. Stay to the inside of the line. Great, right there.
There's a little idea that Jeff came up with here for a take-apart thing you can put under the seat of your car to use as a rack when you want to flip your plane over at the field. Now, obviously, this would, you know, just sit on underneath the seat of your car or whatever. You snap it together. It's all PVC,
Put foam up here and here,
and you got a nice little rack.
and you don't need it for this side. You'd put it up here for the.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Sit up. Wait.
Actually, that's a good idea when you're working on stuff too. For putting, like today, I was using your foam thing. Where's that foam thing? Over on a table, Ron? Oh, never mind, never mind. But anyway, this could take the place of that. This is a good idea. Jeff's always one. Ryan, are you done with those elevators yet? Man, get
Oh, here it
busy.
is. Here's your foam pad.
Frank McMillan's going to give you a body slam. You'll never see a picture in a magazine. Yeah, here's the old thing for putting a plane in. Just a chunk of foam, and this is like the Take It to the Field special here. Another good idea from Jeff Stifle.
And you would wait, and if you weight it down, then drill some straps in, and then belt those straps over it. Dust devil wouldn't lift the plane up.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Or you could have hooks if you're flying like at the club field. Put some hooks in the ground, like I put my stooge in.
Yeah, U-hooks on the grass.
Yeah, U-hooks with 1/8" music work.
You still need something to come up over the plane, though, to hold the plane down.
Yeah. How's this coming, Jimmy? Okay?
Yeah, it looks fine. I think that's about as far as I'm going to go till I get the plywood piece cut.
Yeah.
Cut it to shape from there.
Aside from the
Good building session today. Everybody's having a good time.
This was about $2 to $3.
Yeah,
Monday nights at Wendy's. What a thrill. 2 pies, 4 sodas. Yeah, project night here at here at Wendy's house. We have 2 PMs under construction, 1 Jaguar, 1 small Cardinal. So much junk on it. Anyway, had a great session last night. Great, just great. Here's one thing I wanted to show. Anybody that has never seen this canopy, this is the plane that Jeff Stifle started a couple of years ago. Then his wife got pregnant, of course. Kind of put the kibosh on it, but brought this over last night during all the little rivet details inside. Nice little pilot. I got to tell you a funny story about this pilot while we're talking about pilots. Look at the nice instruments here. Nice instrument work. Let's see if we can get it on the camera. Just give you a little thought. He's got all the little rivet heads going around the back and the seat and all that stuff. Anyway, what happened with Jeff, I was watching his house years ago while he was out on vacation with his with his wife, and I was feeding his cat. And what we did one day toward the end of the vacation, Midgley came over and we went down to Jeff's house, and he had the plane just like you see it here, and we took the canopy off, took some lacquer thinner and made the pilot bald, put the canopy back on, and it was about 2 weeks before he recognized that the pilot, because he wasn't working on the plane every day, he recognized that the pilot was bald, and he called up, "Hey, you guys are..." So, anyway, we'll get back to our project later. We got to go do some work on the house today. Now this morning I just want to, I only have a little bit of time here. I want to do a little test fit here. I want to make up a dashboard. Just test that my parts all fit. Get a little tape or pin or something to hold these in position so I can make up the dashboard. After fumbling around for 5 minutes, I finally realized a pin would be easier than just trying to balance everything in there. Now the reason for that is I want to cut out a little pattern for my dashboard next. That's the next thing. I'll get some 64th plywood and try to make up a little pattern for the dashboard. Now the next step in making this is I cut a piece out of cardboard, IBM card, till I got the shape I wanted. I traced it out on 16th plywood. Now, if you were looking to save a little bit of weight, yeah, of course you could do it on balsa, but in this case what I'm trying to do is I want to get as firm and stiff of a cockpit area as I can. I don't want any cracks or anything breaking or falling apart. And this little amount of plywood really won't add anything as far as weight goes. This is important though. And I've made this mistake so many times, I'm sick of telling you. Is to get a tight fit on a dashboard, you still want to get that airtight fit. You don't want to have a loose fit. And make sure that when you put the canopy down, it all kind of looks like it belongs there. It can't stick up so high that the guy can't see where he's going. Even though this is not a scale plane, that seems like it would be important. Okay, with that little pattern, I want to start laying out the instruments. Just make sure we have and I've done this of course, make sure you can still see forward on it, at least make it half realistic anyway. Now from an 1/8" piece of plywood, what I've done is traced out my little backer board that's going to hold the instruments. This gives it a three-dimensional look. The idea of this is to have a three-dimensional look. And I've used a little grindstone on a Dremel tool to burn those holes in. Try to get them in some semi-realistic manner, of course. And now I want to take this piece, I'll saw this out, and this will become a sandwich, and my instruments will go in here. But they'll have a three-dimensional look by doing this. And all this little detail, you think, somebody looks in a cockpit, nobody's going to see it. Baloney. When this is done right, I'm not saying this one will be, but like the Red Baron, people used to look in there and go, shh, how did he do that? How did he do that? Now what I've done, I've taken some 500 wet and dry sandpaper, glue it right with CA, sand the plywood a little bit, leave the dust on, glue the sandpaper right to it. Now I want to look up to the light and spot out all my little instrument holes. Now I can just trace out these holes roughly, and I'll go back in with the Dremel tool and burn them out. Now the little 500 sandpaper adds a nice texture look. If you paint it, well, yeah, you can get a lot of different effects, but the 500 sandpaper looks like what a real dashboard would look like, the anti-glare kind of look. And now, because we have a different grid on the floor, we have a rough, like 80 grit or something, and some mild grid up here, it gives a nice contrast. Everything starts to look 2- and 3-dimensional. All right, I'll just burn these out with the Dremel tool. Alright, now all I'm going to do is trace out on the back of this with my backer board and go cut this out on the jigsaw. This is the whole purpose of this. It gives it a nice three-dimensional look. And of course, now the edges where you can see the wood, we'll hit those with a little bit of an ink marker. Not paint. An ink marker is much better. It leaves a nice dull finish. Now I clipped out some of the instruments that look like the appropriate size. I want to see them through there. See, that gives that a nice three-dimensional look. So what I'm going to do is cut these out with a pair of scissors and just tack glue them on in place here with a little drop of CA. STREGA. What, the wood in the back? You know, a lot of things that get done. So anyway, this week. Now what I did, I took an ink marker and just, ink seems to work real well. It gives a nice contrast. And if a little bit gets on a sandpaper, it doesn't really matter. I get the edges nice and black, flip it over, do the same thing from the back. That really adds a nice three-dimensional look to the instruments. So all these little tips and tricks and whatever, these are all things I've stolen from people that build scale models. I don't take any credit for any of these ideas at all. Now what I did, I took a piece of an old canopy here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sandwich this together. I'm going to take this piece, sandwich in a piece of this same stuff canopies are made out of. Without that laminate in there, this really doesn't, you don't get the total effect. I'm going to do this with 5-minute epoxy and then put this aside to dry, and while this is aside to dry, I'll work on the seat. And this really, what gives you the effect is when you see the, I'll try to do this on camera here, you can see that as you look through the canopy, you can see the glass reflecting on the instruments. That's what really makes this look, at least in my book, realistic. Anyway, with that in mind, I'll laminate this together with 5-minute, try not to get any inside on the glass where you can see it. I just put dots with a toothpick all around the edge. While this is drying, I'll work on the seat. Now, I just want to get a nice edge on here now that this epoxy is dry. You have this nice three-dimensional dashboard now. And of course we can still add more details. Notice I haven't assembled anything yet. I'm making all these parts so I can paint them and detail them, do the final detailing and everything, and then glue them together. Once a cockpit is put together like a box, you can go crazy trying to get in there and get around corners and things. If it's all sitting out like this, boy, it makes life a lot easier. And I want to get a nice even edge on this. The combination of the black from the ink marker, the sandpaper, various grits, and the gloss of the glass on the instruments gives a nice, real nice texture to everything. Very realistic, very nice. Of course, this really isn't a scale model. This is just meant to be like a, I don't even know the right word, like a fantasy model, but it is nice, and this is certainly a part of model aviation that might be lost forever if nobody documents it. Alright, so far this is what we have as far as cockpit detail goes, and I'm working on a pattern right now. Make a little pattern up for the seat that we want to use. I just put the parts in here just to make sure I have a nice tight fit. I don't want any air leaks into here. And then I can get the angle that I want to have the dashboard on. And I can finalize my pattern for the seat. But this guy's good and skinny too. What I did, I made up a little pattern for the seat to take a look at how I wanted it. And then I realized when I put the canopy on, I don't want it so close to the canopy that it's putting stress on. And I want to lay the seat back just a little bit. Give it a realistic angle. A pilot doesn't sit, you know, like he's at the dinner table. He kind of lays back. So here's a little tip. When you want to have a pattern that you know is close but no cigar, now you can lay it out on another piece of plywood and just add the material. See, in this case I needed material at the bottom and material around the top. So use that for your first pattern and just get rid of it. Now you can get the guy in there. Let's get him in some kind of realistic reclining position here. Again, I don't have any of these parts glued in. I want to do some final detailing. Now I can cut the bottom of the seat. Okay, now every step of the way you want to make sure you're not building something you can't get the canopy on. Next thing is let's make a pattern for the bottom of the seat, and then I can actually detail up the part of the seat that we're going to see. Now remember that hatch we cut out at the top and we're saving it? One of the things we can use that for is the bottom of the seat, and since it already has the hollowing part of the curve, I'm taking a kicker bottle, I want to have a little reverse curve in a seat. You just don't want to have a flat, a pilot wouldn't be sitting on a flat seat here. You want to have some, some curvature to it anyway. And then we can just attach this with the angle that we want and cut out the bottom of the seat. You see how we've used up that hatch, and it has a nice little reverse curve in it. Now we can just trim out for the bottom of the seat. Okay, now I'm just going to take a little bit off each side until this drops right in nice with a relatively, well, it all fits already. I don't even have to drop it in. Get the nice angle that we want. Plus you can also see a little light under the seat itself, which it makes it a little more realistic. You can see the floor going under the seat in this position. Alright, now we're going to have to make the back of the seat and then make the back details on the back of the seat. What I did, I used the other half of the curved block that hatch that came off the other half to make the other half of the seat. And what I want to do is get a nice realistic joint down at the bottom so I don't have to use a lot of filler or anything down there. And I put the curve on the back of the seat so it really has the look of I'm trying to curve the back in. It has the look of a real, like a Mustang type of seat. And what I'll do here is I'll just harden up the edge with CA just to make sure we don't lose that edge. Again, just wipe it with Q-tips. This was nice that we could use up that hatch, because that hatch had that curve already carved into it, so that was really nice that we could do that. And now it makes for a real, nothing more unrealistic than a flat seat. It looks like something from a dollhouse or something. So this gives it a little bit of a curve like a normal aircraft seat would have. And we'll glue that in position, get a nice thin seam down there. Okay, we're ready to do some detailing on the seat now. That's all nice in one piece and fits right in the cockpit real nice. Now a good way to add some detail to this is with an ordinary ballpoint pen, and because this is soft balsa, it puts the creases right in and has the look of rolled and pleated interiors, or whatever you want to call it, like a cushiony seat would have. It's an ordinary ballpoint pen, and it leaves a nice detailed look in the wood. Kind of has the look of a rolled and pleated interior here. Ordinary ballpoint pen. Just take an ordinary Sharpie permanent marker and blacken it all in. This is going to be a black vinyl seat. Blacken it all in, and you'll pick up all the highlights and the details of all the little ridges that you've put in there. Believe it or not, when this is all done, it won't look so bad. But now you have all those nice ridges in there. Take a look and see how this is all shaping up so far. But of course, always give this a shot. Put the old canopy on and just see how you like it. Yeah, so far so good. Now there's a lot of materials you can use to make seat belts out of. One of the things that it seems to work real good is 1200 sandpaper folded over. And what I do, I fold it over, get some CA along the edge, get it on there with the Q-tips. That tends to get some dust in there and kick it off. Fold it over. Now this way you have the texture on both sides. And you can just press it down underneath a piece of plywood till it dries. Now after that kicks off, I trace out the seat roughly 1/8 of an inch thinner than the seat, and I can get the harness belts all in one cut here, all in one piece of paper. Now with the harness and everything ready, now this piece you can just fold back and tack glue it in place. That gives you that nice edge right there. Now another nice way I've done this in the past is with shoelaces. But in this case, I don't know, the shoelaces would be a little bit out of scale. They'd be like way too thick. But the 1200 sandpaper does work well for this. Now here's one of these tricks that's worth $1 million. It's just unbelievable how nice it works. This is the packaging that these surgical steel blades come in. Midgley gave me these. If you need one of these packages, just let me know. I'll send you one up and even have a blade in it. Now I stripped off some of the packaging material. What this is very, very soft, almost pure aluminum. And you can see when you put a fold in it, it stays folded real nice. And what we're going to use this for is to make some very realistic belt buckles. How realistic that looks as a seat belt buckle, and it's just a little piece that goes around and around and around. There's nothing crazy about it. And then in the back, just drop a CA, hold it. Again, we get this nice variety of texture where we have some shiny stuff. The dull, the seat belt actually is dull. If you were going to use material, you wouldn't want to use shiny material. Everything inside of a cockpit is usually dull. And all you do here is lay the material flat on a table, take some Q-tips, and rub it flat. Cut it into thin strips. The scissor is just perfect for this. You can see I'm just wrapping this around, and each time you wrap it, it gets a little thicker than the material behind it. It adds another three-dimensional look. What we're trying for is a lot of little three-dimensional things that'll catch your eye, some sparkle, some shine. Not everything exactly the same. And one final little touch you can put is with a pen, ballpoint pen again, you can put in some of the details of the belt buckle. And just any little detail that gives it a little texture, so it just doesn't look like an ordinary block of aluminum. And what I did, I just glued this to a piece of backer, 16th balsa backer, so that it would sandwich these belt joints in and give me a nice smooth fit on the back. Now I'm just going to blend this into where my canopy sits in. Now I just put some simulated lightning holes in the back of this chair assembly. Dress off the edge. Get a nice clean edge here. Now of course the old Sharpie permanent markers make a nice dull finish, real quick too. Well, that's about all we're going to have time for today. Tomorrow we'll get into painting the other parts, putting some more details on, maybe even finishing this up, I don't know. We have only a few hours each day to devote to building, so trying to make the most of what we can, and obviously try to give you as many little ideas and tips and ideas and who knows what. Give you a headache. Okay, this is where we ended up today. We'll pick this up tomorrow. Hopefully get a good day at the concrete site here, the quarry. Well, we hope you're enjoying the presentation. We're going to pack this in today. This is the end. This is the end. Okay. And try to pick this up tomorrow with some more detailing, and just while I'm thinking about it is right now to be thinking about what we're going to do between now and the next time we work on this, what else we can put in here for some more details and really make it as well detailed as possible. Alright, today we only have a little time left here. We want to mark out, I want to make the control yoke. I want to try to get it here in position. I'm going to mark this spot with a pen, then go in and drill a hole on a drill press and make up the little yoke. Anybody that's ever seen a real a stick inside a Mustang or whatever knows there's a little handle on the end of it. We're going to make up a little handle on the end of this, and we're using, actually just using an ordinary toothpick for the yoke. Now, step one is I cut the cut the flat end of the pointy end of the toothpick off. Now I'm going to get some material and make a little handle up here, the little handle. I keep calling this a yoke, it's really a stick. Boy, Al Ray would jump all over me for this. Now the next step is I pressed on a little piece of tubing right over the toothpick. I drop a CA and then chamfer off the top edge here. And that will then be our control stick. Okay, I just use a little eyelet here to simulate the boot that would be going down into the floor. And this is ready for painting. Now I'll get out some flat black paint, get this painted up, and this can be glued in position. Now one of the techniques I use, when you're doing cockpit details, you want to take the same color. I've taken some black and some white, and constantly change the shade so it adds some dimension to it, because the one thing you really don't have in a cockpit is that three-dimensional look. So I want to have each thing a little bit different color gray, at least on the stick here, and I'll use this to practice my paint mixing. I want the stick to be gray, but I want the knobs to be black shiny like they were rubber. Rubber would be black and shiny. So again, this is just, you know, so keep saying it over and over again, like dollhouse work. My wife would be proud of me. The stick is silver, not metallic silver, like a gray silver, and I can just tone it down a little with the white, make a little palette just like you do in artwork, and we'll be doing all the painting inside that way with various shades. Leave the white and black out so you can tone it up or tone it down, as the case may be. I'll have to show this on a macro lens here. Now you just see the three different colors of paint we have on here. Alright, that's pretty much ready to glue in now. Now what I did, I just put a nice little eyelet around the stick when I glued it in. Of course I'll build a nice big layer of thick CA around the bottom of it to hold it in position and harden up the wood. You see how you can see the little edge of the eyelet sticking up? It kind of looks like a boot, a little stick. The shiny black simulating the rubber. Now as always, it's good to do a little test fit, check all your parts here. We're going to be getting ready to paint some of these parts, or maybe even today. Check everything out, make sure everything still snaps right back into position. This is like a little build-it-yourself kit here. It's always easier to work on these parts when they're not glued in. Boy, once you glue them in, it seems like you need paintbrushes that go around corners and all kinds of crazy stuff. Okay, with the little stick and so we're going to make the throttle and this whatever this is going to be, the flap actuator rods here. We'll do that next. Now I took a pin and just bent it over here and put a little blob of thick CA on it and painted it black. That'll be one of my lever arms. Now what I'm doing, I'm mixing up some what I hope is going to be the zinc oxide color of paint. I mix a little white, a little green. And what I'm going to do is try to three-dimensionalize. In other words, anything that's further back in the canopy painted a little darker, anything further forward a little lighter. I'll also put just a little bit of talcum powder in this mix, just so that it'll be a dull finish. As you go along, you can make some surfaces darker or lighter. Now one thing I have to mention here before this video ends, we're near the end. This will be whatever we have left over on this canopy will picked up. This is an ongoing set of tapes of the building of STREGA. So you may or may not want to watch some of the other tapes but we hope you get some good information out of these tapes, something you can use on your next plane, so that, you know, my theme for 1995 is there's room in this hobby for everybody. Certainly room for semi-scale planes, pipes, no pipes, smoke pipes, whatever. We all have room. We all have little interesting things we like to do. And man, let's get Al Ray back in the hobby. That's goal one here. Let's go, man. Get him back. Diversity. How about Walker's B-17? How about some more semi-scale plane? How about some Reno Air Racers? Awesome. There's a good tip when you're painting little parts. Just use an X-Acto knife to hold them in position, and you get nice. Because I got one coat on there. I'll start painting up the second coat. Vary it by putting more and less talcum powder in the paint. You'd like a flat finish. And the colors inside the holes can be a little darker. Things in the foreground can be a little bit lighter. Background darker, foreground lighter. It'll make everything look more three-dimensional. Just wanted to show how I've got the two colors of shading on here now. And I put even more talcum powder in it as I darkened up the paint here. Kind of like using a little palette, mix it and get it right on there. Now I mixed up a real light batch. This has a little extra white in it for doing the outside of the cockpit. And obviously, you're pretty much ready to start doing some little fine details on this. Usually it'll take 2 or 3 coats depending on how much talcum powder you put in the paint. A little extra talc, make it nice and flat like it should be. Then it also accents when you see the shiny paint that's buffed out and this dull. It really stands out real nice. Now you also want to paint half up in the ridge here. Now I can see we're running out of tape here and I don't want to leave out any of the details, so what I'm going to do is pick this up from the point we're at now on the next tape, which will be tape 4 of the STREGA set. This is tape 3, 1995 set. There'll still be some more details on the next tape. Actually, I wanted to get all the detail on here because I expect, you know, with some luck, we'll see some real nice canopies. Not only that, I want to pass on all the things that I've picked up over the years from all the people who have been good enough to share them with me. Kind of a payback thing, nothing special. Yeah, we're going to let all the paint dry and then get into some super detailing on these little parts. As I said, this probably is going to run into the next tape, but if it does, I guess I'll be a big generous fool and send people 2 tapes for the price of 1, because this is really good information. I'd really like to get it out to the people and have a little contest. Who can have the nicest canopy? Hey, great idea. I started my detailing here with a little ink pen, ordinary India ink in a pen, and just putting out some rivet heads. I'll do this piece next, and of course anything else from this point on will just be detailing of parts. And boy, this is a lot easier to do. This is why you don't glue the canopy together until the very end of the plane. Get all this detailing in before. And parts with all the rivet head detailing on them. Relatively easy to do. Now what I did, I sharpened up a piece of aluminum tubing here, and I'm just using this to put little indentations into the wood. And these can make simulated rivets or Zeus fasteners. And that you can just put those fine little rivet head details in there. And you can put them randomly wherever you think they look good. See, now in the middle of each circle you can put a little slit. Makes it look kind of like a screw head or a Zeus fastener, as the case may be. You can make some pretty creative stuff this way. It only takes a few seconds. See, I've turned the circles into screw heads here in some spots. And glued in our little pin. We'll do the same on the other side here. Our little throttle quadrant, our little flap, whatever this is. Who knows what this is? TV channel changer, who knows? Alright, what we're going to do, we're going to pick the little bit that's left of this up on the next tape. There's still some little detailing and some other little stuff I want to do to trim around the edge here. I want to make a backrest piece here. A couple other little details I want to do, but I hope from watching this, you know, you've gotten some good ideas. And obviously the theme of 1995, the year coming up, is there's room in this hobby for all of us. Let's all try to remember that. This is a good year to remember. There's room for semi-scales, room for jets, room for twins, room for big planes, small planes, pipes, no pipes, people with long hair, people with black faces. There's room in this event for all of us. That's my closing remarks. And we'll see you on the next tape. Hope you'd enjoyed, really, all the little details that have gone into this. It's a labor of love. Closing this video out with one of my favorite pictures. Look at this snake in the grass over here. The video snake. Anyway, working hard to become a reptile in disguise here. Anyway, Bob Lampione's official flight at Flushing. Okay, see you on the next tape. Strega, 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 strega.